Ladies and gentlemen, this week's Gaming.com video, we're going to be further discussing frame rate and resolution for the next generation consoles. We have information from Ubisoft regarding Watch Dogs and also Guerrilla for Killzone Shadowfall, and they've spoken about the resolution and the frame rates that they are targeting. So let's start with Ubisoft's title first. Now, we have two parts to this. The first comes from an interview with Jonathan Morin, and he is the creative director of Watch Dogs, and he said, and I quote in an interview, "Right now, the frame rate we're focusing on is a steady 30 frames per second. There's always a balance, especially for open world, between the simulation and the rest. I think for where we are, the most important thing is the steadiness and ensuring that it always is kept the same, so when you play it, it feels right." Okay, so out of quote. So that sounds great. So he's saying that, of course, they would rather have the game capped at 30 frames per second, make sure that the game's running smoothly rather than have frames per second drops, which is fine, fair enough, and everyone agrees. However, he was then asked, what is the final resolutions of the title? In other words, what is the native resolution that the game is running on for each of the platforms? And he said, and I quote, "I'm unsure." They also added, however, that things are, well, becoming a little bit more complicated because various members of the team were tweeted and stalked, and basically they managed to get hold of some people who were actually developing the title. And as far as what we understand it, they have stated, and I quote, 720p for the PS3 and Xbox 360, 1080p on the PlayStation 4, but to be decided on the Xbox One. They also added to this that there was a big difference between the last generation and the next generation. So in other words, the PS3 to PS4, for example. And of course, they're saying that the PC can hit up to 60 frames per second at 1080p. And they're aiming for this kind of level on the PlayStation 4. So then they were asked about the Xbox One version, because obviously there have been some comments by developers regarding the Xbox One's performance. And they have stated that both hit 30 frames per second easy. I think Xbox One suffers a few dips from 60 frames per second. PS4 is a smooth and definitive version. Finally, they were asked about the Wii U, because there's a lot of different theories behind the Wii U. Some people believe that the Wii U is pretty much, current generation. Other people say it's a 1.5 generation, in other words, somewhat sandwiched between the PS3 and the PS4. Some developers are, going backwards and forwards. However, they have stated, and I quote, "Meh. Wii U is on par with the current generation, to be honest." Okay, so that's the end of that, right? Well, no, remember I did say that there are two pieces of news regarding this, and the second is from Killzone Shadowfall developers, also known as Guerrilla. The lead designer, who is, prepare for me to pronounce this horribly wrong, Eric Bolges, I'm hoping I've pronounced that correctly, that's Boltjes. Anyway, he has said, and I quote, "No, we're running at 60 frames per second. This is regarding the multiplayer, might I add. However, the game may drop a few frames in extreme situations when there is a lot of GPU-intensive things going on at once. Guaranteeing a constant 60 frames per second under such circumstances would have required undesired concessions. We wanted to make sure that Killzone Shadowfall's multiplayer would present a visual spectacle, boasting a stunning level of detail (LOD) in 1080p, at 60 frames per second, while still allowing 24 players and their drones, which is effectively 48 entities, to take part at once. We're very proud of the result. When you move through the map, you'll notice lots of intricate details, from beautiful reflective surfaces to individually moving leaves on the foliage." End quote. So, not exactly huge news. I would really like them to confirm Watch Dogs' internal resolution. Obviously, there have been quotes from previous developers who have stated there's a large chasm of a difference between the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. Other developers have said it's not too much. It's really difficult to know 100%, of course, because Some developers obviously want to be more diplomatic than others, and I'm sure many of you will remember the video that I did just a week or so ago now, where developers said, and I quote, "Oh man, it's like a 50% difference between the two platforms." Obviously, there's a variety of different reasons behind this. One of them is simply that there is a huge power differential between the two systems regarding the GCN architectures and the memory. However, others are also citing that there's not just that reason, there's a huge difference in terms of API, with one developer actually saying that the PlayStation 4's API was considerably better than the Xbox One's. In fact, they actually said the Xbox One's API was, I don't remember the exact word, it was either horrible, awful, terrible, something like that. In other words, it wasn't a very nice, friendly word, let's go with that. And so, I imagine worse APIs are obviously not exactly helping things. Obviously, there's also that rumour that's circulating the internets right now, and you can check out my video from it yesterday, which is concerning the new API that AMD are working on, which of course goes hand in hand with the GCN architecture, and that is known as Mantle. Mantle is in theory going to allow better ports between PlayStation and Xbox One to PC, because obviously the problem with PC development is you don't get the low-level access to basically coding to metal, as developers say, in other words, low-level access to the hardware, which means, of course, that you need to artificially, let's go with bloat the specifications, because there's always that large overhead in regards to processing. I think it's going to be very interesting just how things go. I have a feeling that coding close to the ground is definitely going to help the Xbox One. As it is, however, developers are still very early into the life of both systems. I mean, for Pete's sake, they've not even been released yet. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I will see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.